This was not an accident. This was a violation. This is the last photograph ever taken of Ángela, captured moments before tragedy struck. She vanished in the river. 3 days later, her body was found floating upstream. Her body bore marks of violence and a silence that screamed the truth. 7 people were with her. None could explain what happened. 2 autopsies, 2 different stories. One inconvenient truth. Stay with us to the end to uncover the whole truth behind this shocking case. Ángela Aguirre Yaguare was born in 2002 in Ciudad Guayana, a city in the state of Bolívar, Venezuela. She grew up there with her family. By 2019, Ángela was 16 years old and a student in her final year of high school at the Maranatha Adventist Educational Unit, a school located in the San Felix area. She was a teenager full of aspirations and plans at a pivotal moment in her young life. On Saturday, March 23rd of that year, her father, Ángel Daniel Aguirre, drove her to the Italo-Venezuelan club of Puerto Ordaz. There, Ángela met up with José Alberto Cedeño, who was celebrating his birthday, and Glauber Zorrilla. Both were waiting in a vehicle. Her father waited a few more minutes, ensuring she was safe and in good company, before driving away as he saw her get into the car with the young men. Around 6:30 in the evening, Ángela boarded a boat named La Caqui, owned by José Zorrilla. 7 other people were on board, all heading to the island of La Terracaya, navigating the Caroní River. Despite a ban on boat departures that day for reasons never publicly clarified, the group decided to press on with their plan. The trip was part of José Alberto's birthday celebration, though it was meant to be a temporary outing. After the boat ride, the party was set to continue at the birthday boy's house. However, what transpired during that short trip on the water remains an enigma to this day. The only ones who truly know what happened are the 7 people who accompanied Ángela that evening. No one else was there. The last trace of her was a photograph she posted on one of her social media accounts shortly after 8 o'clock at night. In the image, Ángela appeared alone, with a calm expression, typical of a young woman enjoying a special moment with friends. Nothing in her face or the setting hinted that something was about to go terribly wrong. It was a simple, seemingly innocent selfie, with no signs of danger. But in the early hours of the next day, around 2 in the morning, the calm was shattered by a phone call. Joana Rodriguez, the birthday boy's mother, contacted Yerlis Jaguare, Ángela's mother, to inform her that something terrible had happened during the boat trip. Ángela had disappeared into the waters of the Caroní River. The last concrete sign of Ángela Aguirre was that selfie, which she posted while aboard the boat La Caqui, the same vessel she had taken with the organizers of the birthday party. That seemingly harmless image ended up being the only visual clue to her whereabouts. According to her mother's testimony, communication with Ángela was lost shortly after 8 o'clock p.m. From that moment on, they began calling her insistently, but she never answered again. For several hours, uncertainty grew. No one provided clear answers. It wasn't until 2 o'clock in the morning that the family received a distressing call. They were told that Ángela had supposedly fallen into the water from the boat and, despite attempts to find her, was missing. Her family immediately notified the authorities. A search operation was launched, involving various security and rescue agencies, police officers, emergency teams, personnel from the Bolívar state government, as well as neighbors, friends, and compassionate strangers, who joined the effort voluntarily. They all shared a single goal: to find Ángela alive. The search began without delay. Day and night they scoured the banks of the Caroní River, checking every corner, every current, hoping to find a clue. The operation was supported by a helicopter provided by the state government, as well as several drones and private boats, including jet skis, which helped to expand the search radius in a detailed and continuous manner. Meanwhile, the Corps of Scientific, Penal, and Criminalistic Investigations also arrived to begin their inquiries. As part of the procedure, statements were taken from the 7 young people who were with Ángela on the boat and were part of the celebration group. However, despite the exhaustive efforts, the search yielded no immediate results. 3 days of anguish, silence, and unanswered questions passed. Finally, on March 26, 2019, Ángela's lifeless body was found by rescue teams. She was found floating in the river, dressed in her swimsuit, her life jacket still on. Her body was discovered nearly 8 kilometers upstream, a baffling detail, as it was against the river's natural current. The discovery was made near the El Rey Beach Resort in Puerto Ordaz. News of the body's discovery spread quickly, even amidst a massive power outage that had plunged much of the country into darkness. Ángela's body showed visible injuries, including blows to the head and face, particularly on her cheeks. The authorities began a detailed examination of the body to determine precisely what had happened to her that night on the Caroní River. The possibility that Ángela Aguirre's disappearance and death were a simple accident was quickly dismissed by the authorities. The preliminary results of the autopsy, along with other forensic findings, radically changed the course of the investigation. The injuries found on the young woman's body were not consistent with an accidental fall. On the contrary, the evidence clearly pointed to a case of femicide. The medical legal report revealed that Ángela had suffered severe cranioencephalic trauma and facial injuries, the result of blows inflicted with a blunt object. These wounds were incompatible with a common fall into the water. Furthermore, clear signs of sexual assault were also detected. The injuries to her thighs and private areas, described as severe, reinforced the hypothesis of an assault prior to her death. Authorities then began to question the 7 people who were with Ángela that night, aboard the boat La Kaki. They were 5 men and 2 women: Diana Nichieza, Jocelyn Barreto, Orlando Salazar, Wilmer Diaz, José Alberto Cedeño, the birthday boy, Glauber Zorrilla, and José Zorrilla. Their statements, far from clarifying the events, only created more doubt. The accounts were inconsistent, contradictory on many points, and some were simply not credible, which further deepened suspicions about what truly happened during that trip. The Aguirre family's lawyer, Yamilet Carvajal, reported that according to one of the testimonies, at some point during the night, someone went to get a beer, and when they returned, Ángela was gone. They claimed she had fallen into the river and drowned, but this narrative did not hold up against the forensic findings. The medical evidence indicated that Ángela had been beaten while still alive and was subsequently thrown into the water, completely ruling out the idea of an accidental fall. One of the most relevant testimonies came from José Alberto Cedeño, the young man celebrating his birthday that night, who was also arrested along with the others on March 26th. José Alberto admitted to making mistakes and reckless choices that could have led to the fatal outcome, though he maintained his innocence regarding any direct harm to Ángela. He insisted he had no reason to attack one of his closest friends. According to his version, as soon as they arrived at the meeting point, he introduced her to the other members of the group, as most of them didn't know her. He stated that he himself put the life jacket on her and put one on himself as well. He said the group set off without any issues, and that during the roughly 30-minute journey, Ángela was taking pictures with her phone. When they reached La Terracaya Island, it was starting to get dark. Everyone got off the boat, and José Alberto said he took off his life jacket then. He described how they stayed by the shore while the rest of the group dispersed around the island to talk and explore. He claimed that he stayed with Ángela and that it was around 7:30 in the evening at that point. According to the testimony offered by José Alberto Cedeño, he and Ángela shared about 5 beers while on the island. At one point, she said she wanted to go into the river. They both went into the water together. As they talked, they began to kiss. The distance from where they were to the stern of the boat was no more than 6 meters. As José Alberto narrated, the current began to gently pull them. To avoid drifting away, they decided to swim diagonally against the current, managing to stabilize themselves at a point they considered safe. He was facing away from the island and Ángela hugged him from behind. They continued kissing in the water. However, the current started to push them again. Although they hadn't moved far, Ángela adjusted her swimsuit and they both tried to swim back, but they couldn't make any headway. They were swimming but making no progress, as if trapped in place. José Alberto asserted that Ángela was behind him the entire time. Feeling exhausted and struggling to breathe, he began to swim harder. He said he felt like he was drowning but was still in the same spot. In the midst of this struggle, he saw a stake used for mooring boats and tried to head towards it. It was then that he noticed a light in the distance. It was a flashlight carried by Glauber Zorrilla, who, according to José Alberto, had been looking for him for a while because they had agreed to smoke a cigarette together. At that moment, José Alberto claimed to be exhausted, out of oxygen, and on the verge of collapse. It was then that he realized Ángela was no longer behind him. The rest of the group rushed to help him out of the water, and he insisted they help search for Ángela, who had been right there with him moments before. They immediately began to search, but they couldn't find her. The young woman had vanished. This happened at approximately 8:30 p.m. They spent 5 hours searching for her without success. During that time, they all remained on the riverbank trying to call for help. They called the emergency number and went to the pier seeking assistance, but no one could offer a concrete solution. According to José Alberto's account, at some point someone told them they had to leave as the river was too rough to continue the search. Despite this, the group did not give up. Some began preparing jet skis to resume the search at dawn. José Alberto, for his part, joined the group that decided to go to Ángela's house to report what had happened. But when they arrived, they found the house dark and with no signs of activity. Faced with the situation, they decided to go to the police to report her disappearance. However, the police officers told them they had to wait 72 hours before they could formally open a case. After all that had happened, José Alberto returned home. His phone had run out of battery, so he put it on to charge. Once it turned on, he contacted a friend named Stephanie and asked for Ángela's mother's phone number. When he got it, he called her immediately. He told her he needed to speak with her urgently, that something terrible had happened. Hearing the young man's distressed voice, Ángela's mother asked what was going on. José Alberto then briefly explained that Ángela had been lost in the river. Confused, she replied that she didn't understand. She told him to tell her exactly where he was so she could come right away. When Ángela's mother arrived at the location he indicated, José Alberto recounted what had happened and handed over her daughter's belongings. He explained that they were together at the back of the boat and that he had stepped away for just a moment to get her a beer. When he returned, according to him, Ángela was gone. Later, José Alberto would state to the police that he didn't feel capable of telling her mother the whole truth about what had occurred at that moment. The next morning, he got up early, dressed, and went to find friends who had boats to continue the search on the river. They returned to the club and began to scour the area. Natalie, Ángela's sister, also accompanied them. She carried her sister's phone as she joined the search, which lasted the entire day. It wasn't until 4 in the afternoon that José Alberto received a call from the CICPC, the investigative police. He was summoned to the station. When he arrived, officers confiscated his phone. They also took Natalie's phone as well as Angela's. Indignation soon spread. Both Angela's family and sectors of civil society began to express their frustration and suspicion. From the moment Angela's disappearance and subsequent death became public, the case captured public attention due to the circumstances. But as days passed, allegations of irregularities, possible corruption, and alarming contradictions between two autopsy reports emerged. The first autopsy indicated that Angela had been the victim of homicide and sexual assault. However, a second forensic report omitted key elements that supported this conclusion, instead casting doubt on the femicide ruling. This prompted a strong reaction from the family, who filed direct complaints with the prosecutor in charge of the case. According to the family, there were signs suggesting that the place where Angela's body was found was not where she died, but rather where her body had been dumped. The recusal motion filed against the prosecutor revealed a critical detail. The gates of the Macagua Dam, one of the structures controlling the Caroní River, were open at the time. This had altered the river's natural course. According to the document, the current was flowing from north to south, the exact opposite of its usual direction. This fact was deeply troubling, as it made it virtually impossible for Angela's body to have traveled against the current on its own. Angela's parents alleged that the lead prosecutor, Emily Hernandez, attempted to manipulate the autopsy results by ordering a second forensic protocol without their authorization or that of their attorneys. The family's defense rejected this new procedure, warning from the outset that the prosecutor's actions were compromised. They believed that from the very beginning, Hernandez had acted irregularly, with bias, and without transparency. For Angela's parents, it was precisely the negligent and corrupt conduct of officials like her that contaminated the process and obstructed their path to justice. They asserted that in Venezuela, particularly in the state of Bolivar, there is a high level of impunity fueled by corrupt prosecutors who, instead of defending the truth, protect private interests in exchange for money, accepting bribes in dollars, gold, property, and other assets. While they were waiting at the public ministry's offices to coordinate their daughter's burial, the prosecutor personally assured them that the public rumors about what had happened to Angela were untrue. Shortly after, on March 29th, Hernandez ordered a second autopsy. This new forensic report indicated that Angela had engaged in consensual sexual relations, that her death was due to an accidental drowning, and that the injuries found on her body were supposedly caused by the impact of the Caroní River's currents. On April 12th, a Venezuelan media outlet published an article alleging that relatives of the detainees had offered bribes to key officials in the case. The report detailed payments of $100,000 in cash, 3 kilos of gold, and the transfer of various properties. These benefits were allegedly distributed among prosecutor Emily Hernandez, officials from the CICPC, and several judges, all in an effort to protect those responsible for Angela's femicide and guarantee their impunity. After multiple delays in the judicial process, including 4 suspended preliminary hearings and the recusal of 2 different courts, the Supreme Court of Justice finally ordered the case to be taken over by a court specializing in gender-based violence on April 13th. On that day, the case was formally accepted and classified as femicide. The decision coincided with a public demonstration organized by Angela's family, joined by citizens who took to the streets demanding justice. That same day, a key piece of evidence was leaked, an audio recording. In it, a crying Angela confessed to a friend that Jose Alberto had left her naked and had abused her. Her parents clearly identified her voice, and the file was submitted to the prosecutor's office as fundamental proof within the judicial case file. More than 70 non-governmental organizations, both national and international, issued a joint statement demanding an impartial, objective, and fully transparent investigation into the murder of Ángela Aguirre. The NGOs expressed their concern over the procedural irregularities and allegations of corruption surrounding the case, and they called on the authorities to ensure that true justice was served without interference. The court officially confirmed the detention of the 7 individuals who were with Ángela on the boat, the Lakaki, on the night she disappeared, and formally initiated the criminal investigation. The preliminary hearing took place in Caracas on July 19th. At this session, the court ratified the pretrial detention for all involved. The 5 men were sent to the El Rodeo II penitentiary, while the 2 women were transferred to the National Institute of Female Orientation, INOF, located in Los Teques. During that hearing, the court presented the formal charges. José Alberto Cedeño was charged with aggravated femicide, sexual violence, and supplying prohibited substances to a minor. The other 6 individuals, Glauber Zorrilla, Orlando Salazar, Wilmer Diaz, Jocelyn Barreto, and Diana Nichieza, were charged with failure to render aid and complicity in the crime of femicide. However, the court's initial decision satisfied no one. Both Ángela's family and the families of the accused expressed their discontent. After more than 2 years of hearings, testimonies, and legal proceedings, the trial concluded on August 11, 2021. That day, the 4th Court on Violence Against Women, which had begun the judicial process in October 2019, delivered its final sentence. José Alberto Cedeño and José Zorrilla were each condemned to 29 years in prison for aggravated femicide. The court established that José Alberto, who was celebrating his birthday the night Ángela disappeared, was the one who sexually abused the young woman, murdered her, and threw her body into the Caroní River. José Zorrilla, meanwhile, was found guilty as a principal accomplice to the crime. As for the other 5 defendants, although they were initially arrested and charged, the court decided to acquit them. However, the public ministry filed an appeal against that acquittal, meaning Glauber Zorrilla, Orlando Salazar, Wilmer Diaz, Jocelyn Barreto, and Diana Nichieza had to remain in custody while the Court of Appeals decided on the matter. In the meantime, 3 of them, Orlando, Glauber, and Wilmer, had already served their sentences for failure to render aid and could eventually be released if the appeal does not succeed. For Gerlitz, Ángela Aguirre's mother, everyone present on the boat that night should be convicted for what happened. She also reported having been subjected to threats and aggression by relatives of the accused. In stark contrast, those close to the detainees maintained that there was no femicide, only a tragic accident. Joana, José Alberto's mother, has publicly defended her son's innocence and expressed her disagreement with the court's sentence. According to her version, it was an accident, a story she claims she told Ángela's parents when she contacted them in the early hours of that morning. Joana also pointed to alleged irregularities in the first forensic report. She stated that a second autopsy carried out by experts sent from Caracas concluded there were no signs of abuse or femicide. She criticized the court for dismissing this second evaluation, despite it having been requested by the director of the CICPC, Douglas Rico. Oslaide Zorrilla, the daughter of José Zorrilla, the other man convicted, also spoke to the press. She agreed with Joana, defending her father's innocence and that of the other defendants, asserting that none of them were capable of committing the crime for which they were accused. For his part, the prosecuting attorney, Joel Garcia, declared that at the time of the verdict, it was unclear what evidence the judge had weighed to convict José Alberto and José Zorrilla while acquitting the others. And so, one of the most widely publicized femicide trials in Venezuela's recent history came to a close. The case leaves behind lingering questions about the role of the judicial system in this process, and whether such cases truly receive the attention they deserve.